Hello and welcome to Tuesday, live right here on the morning after on Sports Grid and Sirius XM channel 159. That's the home for Sports Grid Radio on Sirius XM, all across the Sports Grid network as well. I am Ben Stevens. Plenty to get to until 11 a.m. Eastern time on your Tuesday, live right here on TMA. Week 2 of the NFL preseason is now in the books. One last week of preseason games before we look forward to the regular season. And we use preseason action to provide that forecast, that outlook for the regular season as well. Big news around the National Football League yesterday, specifically at the quarterback position. We are now just 4 days away from the start of the 2022 college football campaign. A look at the Heisman Trophy odds one final time. Okay, Dubs, Kevin Walsh will join us next. We'll go around Major League Baseball. A huge Tuesday in the WNBA postseason as well. All of that live right here on the morning after on Sports Grid. Let's start in the National Football League. A Monday night football game to round out week 2 of the preseason. Last night at MetLife in the storm, the Jets come back from down 16 early, score the final 24 unanswered points of the game, and they beat the Falcons 24-16 at home, winning outright as a 2.5-point underdog. The total of 38.5 goes over. The Jets have scored 24 points in both of their preseason games, both of them victories, by the way. The final tally by my numbers for week 2 of those preseason over-unders, 9 games over, 7 games under, much more of an even split from the 14 of the first 17 preseason games, trending toward an over early on in this preseason action. No Joe Flacco last night. He might be the week 1 starter in a potential revenge game against his former team in the Baltimore Ravens. So because of that, the Jets cautious. Mike White gets the start. Pretty good last night, 12 of 17 for 90 yards. On the other side, though, some solid quarterback play for the Atlanta Falcons. Marcus Mariota gets the start and is the quarterback for the first 3 drives of the game for the Dirty Birds. 6 of 10, 132 yards, and a touchdown strike. The opening drive of the game, he found his second-year tight end in Kyle Pitts for 52 yards down the field. Kyle Pitts displaying while he is already one of the most dynamic tight ends in all of the NFL. But when you look at it from that rookie perspective, Desmond Ridder, great again yesterday for the Atlanta Falcons. Their 3rd-round draft pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. The quarterback out of Cincinnati, 10 of 13 for 143 yards. He also was 10 of 22 for $103 in the Falcons' preseason debut for 2 touchdowns, including the game winner late in that victory over the Detroit Lions. Desmond Ridder very poised yesterday under center for Atlanta. And as we look at it for the 2022 NFL draft class of quarterbacks, again, it wasn't the strongest QB class we have seen. Kenny Pickett, the guy on the top of the board there, was the only quarterback selected in the 1st round. He is a co-favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Desmond Ridder has the 2nd best odds of any quarterback right now, remaining at 25-1. Malik Willis is double that price at 50-1, but we have seen all 3 of these rookie quarterbacks shine so far through the first 2 weeks of the preseason. Kenny Pickett, by the way, 9-1, now the co-favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year with his teammate in Pittsburgh, wide receiver George Pickens. Both Pittsburgh Steelers rookies plus 900 right now to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Hey, welcome to our Sports Grid Radio audience here. The opening hour of the morning after live on this Tuesday right here all across the grid. Sirius XM channel 159. All of our terrestrial radio affiliates now in the mix as well. I am Ben Stevens. The Jets come back from down 16 early on in that first half against the Falcons last night at MetLife, even through the rain and the storms. The Jets score the final 24 unanswered points of the game. They win 24-16 outright as a 2.5-point underdog. The Jets gang green under Robert Saleh in his 2nd year, now a perfect 2-0 so far in this preseason, scoring exactly 24 points in each of their first 2 games. We focused on some of the rookies we saw on display in New York last night. On Sunday evening at MetLife, it was a scary moment for the Giants rookie, the edge rusher Kayvon Thibodeau, out of Oregon. A blindside block going low on Thibodeau, went down in pain, holding his knee. We got reports yesterday, though, not as serious as originally feared. His meniscus, his ACL intact. It's a sprained MCL for the Giants' 5th overall pick of the 2022 NFL Draft. Kayvon Thibodeaux, though, will miss anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks. The Giants remain optimistic that Thibodeaux can be back for the Giants' Week 1 opener. And Kayvon Thibodeaux earlier this offseason, throughout the early portions of training camp, was a co-favorite alongside Aiden Hutchinson for the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Both of those edge rushers were 7-1. Now Hutch moves up a tad by $1 plus 600. Kayvon Thibodeaux still the second best odds to win Defensive Rookie of the Year at 7-1. The number 1 overall pick in Trayvon Walker, the third best price alongside Kyle Hamilton, the rookie safety out of Notre Dame who plays for Baltimore. Both Walker and Hamilton at 10-1. Aiden Hutchinson has been a star of Hard Knocks. It's episode 3 tonight. The Lions apparently had a players-only practice yesterday. All of those news and notes from around the National Football League and training camp, including some big quarterback news in Carolina. Up next on the morning after when Kevin Walsh joins the show. Stay right here.
Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
They play less games.
The early line.
Take a look at the top 4 seeds here in the Big Ten. They're going to play
Aaron
less.
Rodgers and
the morning
Russell
after.
Wilson. We saw movement in the marketplace like
Orlando
Fantasy
Magic.
sports
The Cleveland
today.
Cavaliers are a little thin as well.
Newswire.
Minus 160 favorite on the money line today for Arizona.
Pharrell coast to
CBG,
coast.
that's where they win cups. They win Stanley Cups over there. Give me the
Game
Pens.
time
Kind of
decisions.
bizarre when you consider everybody is out for the Warriors.
In-game live
I
all
like
access.
I like Vandy against Bama. I think Vandy can win the game, take it 4.5.
In-game live. Prime
Oh, yeah,
time.
It's a major, it's a PGA champion.
In-game live. Overtime.
All done before the final bet.
Get the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid. The early line.
Kenny Pickett being viewed as the guy in the room with the highest ceiling should not be much of a debate. They ran to go sign Mitchell Trubisky. They offered up an idea that Mason Rudolph was their favorite quarterback in the sport for so long, yet drafted Pickett. But it did not seem like they were going to give Kenny Pickett any legitimate chance to win this job.
Only on Sports Grid. The morning after.
Are you concerned at all for what this means for Tom at the age of 45, entering his 23rd year?
Definitely not concerned. I think it's something to contemplate, but I think it's something where when you've been doing this so long, you're a veteran now of television. If Ben Stevens takes a week off, Ben Stevens is going to show up and do his job. Now, magnify that times 20 plus, right? And that's Tom Brady.
The Sports Grid Network.
Sports Fest Rick Harr with your Sports News Minute. Well, Ontario was bottled up as far as gambling was concerned for the last 5 years. Of course, the 2018 Supreme Court decision had no impact on Canadian provinces, but it did allow the NFL and other sports to morph in a very aggressive expansion mode as Ontario and other provinces sat, BetMGM and others moved forward. Finally, before the NFL season, BetMGM becomes the official partner of NFL betting in Canada. And so the whole idea of generating significant revenue across the border doesn't impact CFL dollars and the Ontario mobile betting there, but it does significantly affect how the NFL Canada is deployed. What does this do as far as other international NFL games long term, Germany, London, Mexico, and the like? Well, it certainly sets a precedent. Look out for some significant dollars to flow into this process like always.
Plenty of news around the National Football League as week 2 of the preseason is done. Only one more week of preseason action before we get to the regular season opener, just 2 weeks away. Welcome back to the Morning After, live on this Tuesday. If it's Tuesday, it's tangy, and that means old K-Dubs, Kevin Walsh, is in the mix as well. Old K-Dubs, I could get used to sitting next to you on a television program on a weekly basis, not just here on a Tuesday, but maybe on a Saturday morning as well, huh?
Listen, man, big things coming. College football today, right around the corner, week 0. The people are absolutely buzzing about it. I know we are as well, which is really, really exciting. And look, you know, to really make sure that the tang was not just kind of our time here, we had Big Ten Day on the early line today.
Wow.
Favorite win total for yours truly. Look, I know we got a lot to get to. We'll get to it. But can I just sneak this in here quickly?
Please.
You can tell me, be honest. I know you will be. Purdue over 7.5 plus 125. You on the Boilermakers and Aiden O'Connell? Oh, come on, brother. Come on now.
Under.
Come on. What do you mean?
See,
no?
Kev, we'll get to it. There's 4 teams that are at 7.5 right now in the Big Ten West. Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, and Purdue. I am so strongly under on Purdue. They lost so much from last year's team. I understand Aiden O'Connell is back, but I think the optimism out of West Lafayette is a little bit too high right now. See, these are the conversations you can expect every Saturday morning this fall into the early winter, 9 a.m. to noon Eastern time. Myself, old K-Dubs, the mastermind of the pigskin, Joe Lisi as well. A newly revamped trio for a newly revamped college football today. And we'll have a little teaser segment to end out this opening hour, preseason Heisman odds, one final time. It's going to be fun, but Kevin Walsh, the second most premier basketball mind on this network, only behind Donnie Wright's side, of course, is our lead football guy, it feels like, because not only is he one of the co-hosts on CFT each and every Saturday, Kevin's going to be in that chair Sunday mornings as well for Pro Football Today.
Yeah, we're excited about that. I don't know how much Donnie paid you for that little comment there, but I promise in the long run it wasn't worth it, pal. You will get yours, not today and not tomorrow, but at some point you will. Man, oh man, that's an outrageous move. But yeah, Pro Football Today is going to be a lot of fun as well. Mike Blewett and I are going to be joined by a good cast of characters as well. So really excited to get rolling this weekend.
And make sure to tune in to Warren Sharp on Pro Football Today, because that's where you can see him on SportsGrid. All right, let's dive into the news that we have from around the National Football League, because, Kev, on that opening Sunday of the NFL season, you'll be previewing a game in Carolina in which Baker Mayfield will be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, as was expected but made official with an announcement yesterday from the organization. Baker Mayfield, the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. Now, Kev, we know that week 1 opener for the Panthers is against Baker's former team, the Cleveland Browns, who spurned the number 1 overall pick from the 2018 NFL draft in favor of Deshaun Watson. The Panthers, a 1.5-point home favorite. What do you make of the storylines for Baker Mayfield entering that week 1 opener as the starter in Carolina?
You know, Baker is such a storyline guy, right? Such a narrative guy. It couldn't have been anybody other than the Cleveland Browns somehow to open the year up for Baker and his brand new team. And I think that this Panthers group might surprise some people, to be honest with you, because at least on the offensive side of the football, at the end of the day, you know, there was that executives created list, if you remember, that was done by ESPN, the best running backs in the sport, that said Christian McCaffrey was outside of the top 5. Guarantee next year's version looks a lot different. That's the best running back in the NFL. He just has to be out there. That's the reality on Christian McCaffrey. Wide receiver core, again, DJ Moore's legitimate. Top 15, if you will, wide receiver, probably give or take. Robbie Anderson take the top off there. Terrace Marshall Jr., another year in this league. The offensive line drafting Ike Ekwonu and has some other pieces as well. Corbett, Taylor Moton, that I think can help keep Baker upright. As a team, we'll see. The schedule is tough,
Right.
but they're deserving favorites, I think, here, week number 1. I mean, and it's a team that is maybe a little deeper than you realize, even on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you talk about a guy like Austin Larkin, year 2 defensive end out of Purdue, a Boilermakers team that's likely to go over 7.5 wins this year, and you just have to get... I got to be honest with you, pal. You're doing the setup there. I'm looking for Boilermakers in the NFL and hoping that we had one of them on the Carolina Panthers, and we did. It's an Austin Larkin season, if I've ever seen one. But legitimately, I do think the Panthers are deserving favorites there, and offensively can surprise.
That was so well done. So subtle. That caught me so far off guard. Very well done, old K-Dubs. Purdue's winning 9 games this year now because of that. The Panthers, though, have had this line work in their favor, Kev. They were a 1-point favorite. The news happens with Deshaun Watson's 11-game suspension last week, and maybe some of that Baker love. Again, the boulder on the shoulder for Baker Mayfield. We know he plays his best football when he seems to be overlooked or spurned. They are now a 1.5-point favorite. A low total, by the way, 41 and a hook, one of the lowest you will see across the week 1 slate for the NFL regular season. Kevin, you brought up the team overall, though, in Carolina. It's relative expectation, right? 6.5 is the win total. Mm-hmm. The under has the juice. So with Baker Mayfield at the helm of the Panthers offense and Matt Rule still as the head coach in Carolina, what does success for the Panthers in 2022 look like to you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't think that schedule is incredibly kind to them overall. However, we know that the beginning of the year is so important for every team, right? Like we see the graphics all the time. Oh, no team's ever started a 1-3 and made the postseason. That's not exact, but you get the point, right? We know stuff like that exists. First 5 games, 4 at home with a road game against the Giants. It gives you life. Can you get 3-2? That's all you need, right? You're knocking on the door of a win total of 6.5 all of a sudden in that range. The NFC at the back end feels vulnerable. It feels for the taking. I'm not sure if I'm going to push the Panthers into a 7th spot overall and get this group into the playoffs there, but if they can start it early, they give themselves, I think, a legitimate chance to stay in the mix. This schedule has these ebbs and flows here, if you will. If you look as well off of the bye week, right, it's deep into the year. They might limp into it, but to come off of the bye at Seattle, home versus Pittsburgh, and home versus Detroit, those are potential games they could be favored in, right? Yeah. Not guaranteed, but it could necessarily line up that way. It's a super fascinating schedule that if they start on the right foot early, have to in week 1 against the Cleveland Browns, I really think this is a team that we are talking about actually playing meaningful football in December.
Carolina won its first 3 games of 2021 before falling in 12 of their last 14. That plus 410 playoff number tied for the 3rd longest odds in the NFC alongside the Lions and the Bears. So, Kev, as we go through the NFC South, a relatively weak division overall. And as we look at one Tom Brady back at practice yesterday, Tom, in his 45th year on this earth, tied for the 2nd best odds to win the NFL MVP. Kev, did you find anything extremely out of the ordinary for Tom's 11-day absence from Bucs training camp?
Boy, oh boy, relative to my co-host, no. It was confirmed to me that Donnie genuinely doesn't understand what vacation is, and it's why I don't think he's ever and legitimately missed an early line. Donnie thinks Brady is going to retire in the middle of the season because he missed a week of practice leading up to the 2nd preseason game of this season. Look, Tom's earned a week off. That's what it is, and I think that's ultimately what he got. I think he'll be fine.
He's back at practice. We'll see what that means for the Bucs moving forward. We go around Major League Baseball, a showdown in New York. Last night, we break down next.
Your heart's racing. The clock's running out. It all comes down to this. We're talking pregame. Pregame. Get locked in with Game Time Decisions. Your hosts, Gabe Morency and Cam Stewart, will get you ready for game time. Everything you need to know before a game goes off the board, with the bet slips to back it up. Make your best bet with live odds updates, late breaking news, up-to-the-minute injury reports, and real-time analytics from inside the sportsbooks. All the odds, all the action from sports wagering insiders and industry pros like Donnie Rightside, Cam Lou, Cousin Sal, the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, and more. Get the winning edge every weekday afternoon from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 4 Pacific. It's Game Time Decisions. Only on Sports Grid.
You might be the next daily fantasy millionaire. No matter what you watch or where you play, learn from the world's best DFS players. Lineup building tools, expert projections, and advanced stats change the way you play the game. Dominate the competition. DailyRoto.com, the player's choice.
Fantasy Sports Today.
The running back that appears to make the biggest jump maybe in the last 2 months, maybe in all of fantasy, honestly, Davis, is Dameon Pierce, who played for the University of Florida. And the beef that went on at Florida, Davis, is that people wanted to see him get the ball more. He really was never a primary running back at Florida. He's sort of a throwback guy in the sense that you give him the ball, he's never going to lose yards.
The Sports Grid Network. The morning after.
How are you targeting, Tom, the start for Sonny Gray today against the Rangers?
And that has me going to the over on 5.5 strikeouts. It's only sitting at minus 108. For the season, Sonny Gray has a 24.3% strikeout rate, but in 4 of his last 5 starts, he has been over that rate on a game-by-game basis, really boosting up that strikeout rate, which is good to see. The Rangers are a favorable matchup. They have a 23.5% strikeout rate versus righties, which is the 8th worst in the league. He's coming off of 10 strikeout performances in his most recent start.
The Sports Grid Network. Pharrell, coast to coast.
I mean, honestly, between Davis and Diggs, I mean, they are lethal. I mean, between Josh Allen having that choice, and he goes to Davis a lot, and he's got to get step on his targets. But between the two of them, I mean, honestly, it's almost like good luck trying to stop that offense. They are very dangerous.
The Sports Grid Network.
A Subway Series last night underway in the Bronx, battling off the rain between the Mets and the Yankees. Welcome back to the morning after, live here on this Tuesday on Sports Grid. Alongside Kevin Walsh, I am Ben Stevens. Now, in the first Subway Series of this year, back at the end of July, it was the Mets at home taking both games against the Pinstripes. The Yankees returned the favor last night for the first time in a while, Kevin, being booked as an underdog, especially at home inside Yankee Stadium. But it was because of Mad Max getting the start, Max Scherzer for the New York Mets. It did not matter. The Yankees get to Scherzer. All 4 of those runs scored were allowed by Max Scherzer, including Aaron Judge's 47th home run of the year. Kevin, it was one of the worst performances we have seen out of Max Scherzer in a Mets uniform, but it's his second straight start now, giving up 4 earned now in back-to-back performances for the New York Mets. What was your main takeaway from the opener of the Subway Series up in the Bronx last night?
So I don't think we're at some concerning level on Max Scherzer, right? First of all, up against at Atlanta and at the Yankees, no matter the Yankees' struggles, those are difficult asks back-to-back for any pitcher. Also, some of the Atlanta runs, while they were earned against him, he wasn't on the mound when those runs were scored. Something that just kind of always bothers me with pitching, but nevertheless, here was the big thing for me. Andrew Benintendi. The Yankees traded for a .320 hitter at the deadline. Ended his first 22 games in pinstripes, batted under 200. How that happens is completely beyond me. But that right there captures the Yankees' struggles. Everybody, start to finish, playing bad, but in ways that were so drastic. I mean, Andrew Benintendi was trying to compete for a batting title and was like, oh, does this guy need to bat ninth? Like, did we trade? Is this Joey Gallo? Like, there's no pop, there's no hitting, there's no nothing here from Benintendi. But now consecutive multi-hit games, consecutive multi-RBI games. If Andrew Benintendi can be a 300-hitter table setter, everything starts to click all of a sudden. Because what do you know? Benintendi's on base. There's Aaron Judge snapping the 10-game homerless streak where he was batting sub-200 during that stretch. Anthony Rizzo now has guys on in front of him. At some point, Big G will be back. LeMahieu now can bat in a 4 spot, a 5th spot, and work his way back, hopefully getting healthier by the day and starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. Andrew Benintendi is a really important Yankee. If he can be what he has now been for 2 games in a row at the top of that lineup, it is a huge, huge boost.
And the Yankees have now won 2 consecutive games for the first time since the end of July. Because, Kevin, entering this Subway Series, it felt like the 2 New York baseball teams were trending in very opposite directions. The Mets, all positive, all optimistic. The Yankees, despite avoiding a sweep against the Blue Jays to end out their weekend, still trending downward. Did last night do anything to change the perspective, the atmosphere, the feeling around these 2 New York ball clubs in your mind?
So it doesn't change anything about the Mets, right? Like, the expectation, no matter who is on the mound, is not to sweep the Subway World Series. By the way, no matter how good the teams are at any point, right? Like, that is kind of is just you look for a split, whatever it might be. If you win a series, it's fine. This is really big for the Yankees, though, because you took the last one off of Toronto, you beat Max Scherzer. You've now been gifted Taijuan Walker, who, no slander, is just not Jacob deGrom. And then what do you know? 3 at Oakland, and then 3 against the Los Angeles Angels. You will be booked at, what, at least minus 150 in all of those games? Maybe stronger, maybe minus 175, to be honest with you. I'm not telling you they're going to rip off 8 in a row, but they've got a chance. And that's something that the Yankees need to do. Because despite this major slump that you cannot deny, what's going to matter for this team, who has already run away with this division, what kind of baseball are you playing in September? How do you look going into the playoffs? That's what's going to matter. As there were people, again, selling the Yankees, oh, this team's done, this team's toast, they can't figure it out. What if they're piping hot as they close out the year? No one's going to remember the slump here. Hopefully this can start to turn the corner for this team. But as important as last night's game was, even more important now tonight.
And that's what Aaron Judge said. You don't want to be playing bad baseball at any time, especially in the second half of the Major League Baseball season. But last week, Aaron Judge intimated those things, that at least it's happening now in the middle of August. I mean, if it's going to happen in the middle of August versus the middle of October, it's better now than 2 months from this point. The Mets plus 230 in the National League pennant, the second best odds in the NL. The Yankees up the board slightly by 10 cents after last night's win in the American League, plus 210 in the AL pennant behind the Houston Astros, who are the favorites at plus 145. And the Yankees, Kevin, still $1 in front of the Mets for the third best price to win the World Series, plus 450. The Mets at plus 550. There is still this market available on the FanDuel Sportsbook for a Subway Series, not here in the middle toward the end of August, but in the end of October or early November in that World Series Championship Series, the Fall Classic. Who do you think, as we stand here right now on Tuesday, August 23rd, still has the better path of making that World Series?
So, for those that don't know, we did the preseason predictions on the early line. I picked the Subway World Series. And you might say, biased New Yorker. I'm a Yankees fan. I picked the Mets to win. It's about as the most unbiased thing you could possibly do is pick the Mets to beat your team. Because I'm the most unbiased man in all of sports media. Nevertheless, I have to tell you right now, I am not sure how you justify both, not only the Yankees, but even the Astros being in front of the New York Mets. And I'll tell you why. I understand that the Dodgers are the Dodgers, but the Mets right now have a better record than both the Yankees and the Astros. If the Mets have home field advantage against either one of those teams in the World Series, I promise you they are favored to win that series. And here is the sneaky thing that I've been trying to tell people about. Look at tonight's game between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Milwaukee Brewers. Gonsolin against Burns. The Dodgers at home with their ace under -150. Now, what happens when that's Gonsolin versus Jacob deGrom? I'm not telling you the Mets are going to be favored in the baseball game, but by the time it closes, they might be. And what about game number 2? Clayton Kershaw's back going to figure it out and go out there against Max Scherzer? Take the Mets. By the way, do we think Julio Urias is going to be favored at Citi Field? He's not. He's not going to be favored. I'm not telling you the Mets are going to be favored against the Dodgers in every single game. But that series price is not going to be some Dodgers -230, man. That's how good this staff is. Oh, and by the way, their lineup is so good. One of the 5 best in baseball throughout the season. I think the Mets at this point, they don't need to jump the Dodgers because the Dodgers are going to have home field advantage throughout the postseason. But jumping the Yanks and the Astros, I think is warranted at this point.
And it still might sound strange to hear Tony Gonsolin as the Dodgers ace, but with the season-ending elbow injury to Walker Buehler, Tony Gonsolin, the Catman, is the ace right now for this Dodgers staff. They hope to get healthier. They hope Kershaw is back. They hope the young redhead Dustin May can be out there as well. But that's where things stand for the Dodgers. Less than $1.50 favorite at home today against the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Dodgers were a -275 home favorite yesterday. We'll get to what happened at the Ravine in just a moment. Final thoughts on the Subway Series game number 2. It's Frankie Montas getting the start for the Yankees today against Taijuan Walker for the New York Mets. Now, Frankie Montas, in his 3 starts in pinstripes, has been abysmal. 14 earned runs combined in 3 starts, including 6 in his debut at Yankee Stadium in his most recent start. But still the pinstripes, a -134 home favorite. All right, now to Los Angeles, where, Kev, you mentioned Julio Urias on the bump yesterday for the Dodgers against the Brew Crew. And Milwaukee shut the Dodgers out. It was the first shutout for Los Angeles at home inside Dodger Stadium all year long. The first time the Dodgers have failed to scratch across a single run at home all year. A big win for Milwaukee, but still 5 games back of the Cardinals in the National League Central.
And that's kind of the tough spot here for the Brewers, right? Where they just had the Dodgers in their ballpark for 4. You got to split. You split against the Dodgers over 4 games. That feels like a win. You now go to L.A. Genuinely taking 1 out of 3 usually feels like a win. But the entire time you are losing ground to the St. Louis Cardinals. Again, I don't know how many people are checking in on strength of schedule in Major League Baseball, but it's something I've made a point to continually bring up there. Cardinals have a much easier stretch than the Milwaukee Brewers. And that's kind of the difference maker. Now, the Brewers are still live in a wild card race, but that is a tough thing to kind of transition. And it happened pretty quickly, right, for this team all in all. They could not beat bad baseball teams. Pittsburgh and Cincinnati were handing them losses, while the Cardinals were sweeping the Yankees. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you intended on getting to this, but I'll bring it up quickly. Apparently, Jordan Montgomery's the best pitcher in baseball. That's a tough one for the Yanks, who are throwing Frankie Montas tonight. 4 starts, a .35 ERA for Jordan Montgomery. Last night, 9 innings. 1 hit, no walk, 7 Ks. I don't care who he's going up against, but against the Chicago Cubs, man, the Cardinals look pretty dangerous.
The Cardinals have won 8 straight games. The Redbirds are red hot. They've won 19 of their last 23. It's even better than the Dodgers, who have still won 17 of their last 21. And those odds have even worked more in St. Louis's favor. Now live, a -600 favorite on the National League Central odds board on the FanDuel Sportsbook. The Cardinals won 1-0 last night at Wrigley. The only run scored, the 693rd career home run for Albert Pujols. He is only 7 dingers away from 700, and Pujols, the machine, has hit 5 home runs in the last 10 games for St. Louis. All of that in the hunt for October. More Major League Baseball in our second hour. But it's a small snippet, a preview of college football today with preseason Heisman Trophy odds up next.
Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
people are going to the betting window
Betting
and
above
betting
the
them now
rim.
before the trade takes place.
How dare
Diamond
they do
bets.
what's fiscally responsible? See how it plays out. Buffalo's going all in right
Football
now. They
full
need
circle.
all their chips in the middle of the table. It's do or die for them.
And Godwin being out, they've had a little bit of a shakeup.
In-game live all access.
You could take the points. You could take the money line. And
we have to go to San Jose, too. Maybe a small play on San Jose. I'm going to go both underdogs here. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Wow. In-game
Phillies
live.
here,
Prime
over
time.
-128. You do have to lay a little bit of wood here, Donnie, but I think against Patrick Corbin.
But boy, you want to give me 8.5 points with a desperate team facing
Get
elimination.
the winning edge. Only on Sports Grid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
I don't like this Pitt team at all. It's a 7.5. A lot of juice right now in the FanDuel Sportsbook towards the under. Flip to the 8. Maybe they're 8.5. And let's talk a little turkey here with Pitt. With Pitt versus Miami for the Coastal, I do think Pitt found themselves the easier schedule. And perhaps the big difference is one of them goes to Clemson. The other one doesn't play him at all.
Only on Sports Grid. Fantasy Sports Today.
Nico Collins, who got some nice playing time toward the end of the year, but really not a lot of interest. His ADP is 217.
I think Nico Collins is sort of interesting in the same way that like Devin Funchess was interesting, right? Because he's the super athletic guy. He's huge, 6'4", 215. I mean, he got on the field as a rookie. Not that many guys who are drafted where Nico Collins was drafted.
The Sports Grid Network. Pharrell, coast to coast.
Do you believe he has the stones to fire both of them? His dad would have.
I don't. I think Boone is safe, no matter what happens. Maybe if they don't win the East, but that's almost impossible. So I think he's safe. Cashman's contract, I believe, is up after this year. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I would think he'd be in a lot more trouble than Boone would.
The Sports Grid Network.
Only 4 days away from the start of the 2022 college football season. Week 0, this upcoming Saturday, August 27th. A final time to look at the preseason numbers before we get underway in college football on Saturday. And I understand it's week 0. The week 1 full Saturday slate is about 11 days away, but it still is a stage setter of an opportunity here live on the morning after with two guys that will be part of a newly revamped trio for the new college football today. For the first time this season, myself, Kevin Walsh, and Joe Lisi all together this upcoming Saturday to preview week 0 and every other thing you need to know for the 2022 college football campaign, including the Heisman Trophy odds. Kev, I am fired up. How excited are you?
Unbelievably excited, man. Unbelievably excited. We're going to have this thing rocking and rolling this Saturday. I know that everybody might look at week 0 and kind of wonder, how many games have juice? Trust me, enough. Plus, we'll get the chance to really set up a lot of the futures market. That's where you'll get the college football playoff predictions that you need. And it's almost a guarantee that you are not going to be tuning into a show that's going to give you the same 4 across the board. I know that without knowing what Ben or Joe is ready to put forward. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then, I mean, my goodness, week 1. I mean, if you're not already excited for week 1, that's stunning. Because what an incredible slate we have there. 3 ranked, first-ranked games. It all starts right with that Pitt West Virginia game as well on the Thursday. It's just, man, how can you not be jazzed up?
It's all Very good stuff. 3 ranked matchups, 3 top 25 tilts, and it's like the FanDuel Sportsbook is listening to us as we speak. Make college football playoff odds now available, although the market is locked. So they're figuring out those final algorithms and ratings for their numbers and the odds for 2022. We are going to use this time to set up the Heisman Trophy race because, although an individual award for sure, if you are going to strike the pose in early December, your team probably needs to be in that college football playoff conversation, having won a conference championship. And Kev, when we look at the big 3 here, it should be no surprise to see their names and to see their prices, although they are very relatively short before we even start a season. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, and Caleb Williams. C.J. Stroud, the quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes, is the favorite in the preseason to win the 2022 Heisman Trophy, plus $200 in front of the reigning Heisman winner, Bryce Young, the quarterback for Alabama. He is 4-1. Caleb Williams, much like his team, the USC Trojans, has moved only up this board, his number getting shorter and shorter throughout the summer. Now the 3rd best price at plus 600. And Kev, you can see the correlated market to all 3 of these QBs and their 3 teams' prices to win a national championship. Alabama the favorite, Ohio State the 2nd best price, even USC the 5th best number.
So obviously we know that the best teams are going to have the best players, right? And that is the expectation with these 3 quarterbacks here, all kind of offering up maybe something a little different than the next. The C.J. Stroud numbers are going to be ridiculous. Bryce Young and the confidence that people have that they are just going to win every single game they play, plus off of a Heisman Trophy and how impressive he was, has his case. And then Caleb Williams, a little more of a dual threat, and maybe kind of gets that lifting up a program that needed to be lifting narrative that Ohio State and Alabama don't necessarily need. But what interests me so much about those 3 are their counterparts, if you will. The second man in the room, Jackson Smith and Jigba. When you talk about Ohio State, Jahmyr Gibbs, the Alabama running back, transferring over from Georgia Tech. And then Jordan Addison, if you will, right? Last year, the best wide receiver in college football, now in USC with Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. Of that 3, though, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba really, really interest me. You and I talked a little bit off air yesterday about his candidacy. And could he potentially find himself in a 2-man race with his own quarterback? I think it's going to have to start early. The last time we saw Smith and Jigba, he put forward perhaps the single best performance a wide receiver has ever put forward in that Rose Bowl performance there. If he follows that up against Notre Dame with 100-plus yards and 2+ touchdowns, which is not ridiculous. If you saw what he put up in the last game there against Utah, I think 50-1 gets on the move after week number 1. That's what's interesting to me with these 3 front runners is can anybody kind of latch on for a ride, Ben, as the season progresses?
And when you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba, 50-1. Jahmyr Gibbs, 50-1 as well. To reference what Kevin was displaying, Smith and Jigba in the Rose Bowl against Utah, 15 grabs, 347 yards, 3 touchdowns. An FBS bowl game record, not Rose Bowl game record, not Ohio State bowl game record, all of college football at the FBS level. That is how good Jackson Smith and Jigba can be. And Kevin and I had that conversation. We saw a wide receiver for the first time in a very long time win the Heisman Trophy just 2 seasons ago. Devontae Smith out of Alabama. But his quarterback in Mac Jones was a Heisman finalist, but certainly not a preseason favorite as C.J. Stroud is for Ohio State right now. Plus 200, that number. Again, a football game has not even been played. And I understand, and I have said it here on this show, the Buckeyes should have the 2nd best odds to win a national championship. Spoiler alert, Ohio State is my pick to win that CFP title come the middle of January. However, Kevin, it is a short number for a preseason Heisman favorite. So does that allow value deeper down the board? there are a couple of prices at 100 to 1 that you would like to discuss, including a quarterback out of the Big Ten we will see on Saturday. Name Nebraska's starter for 2022. The Texas transfer, Casey Thompson, 100 to 1. And then a running back out of the Big Ten, Blake Corum from Michigan, also 100 to 1. And if Clemson returns to prominence this year, might the ground game in South Carolina for the Tigers, led by Will Shipley, be a big reason? Kevin, all three prices, 100 to 1 to win the Heisman. Long shots for sure. Where do you think the best value is?
Triple-digit trio. You are good at what you do, my friend. Let's start with Casey Thompson. If we get to all of them, great. If not, I want to make sure we get to Casey Thompson because he's the one who's playing this week. The excitement around Thompson began in that Alamo Bowl against Colorado when he had to come in for Sam Ehlinger. An outrageous level of efficiency. How's 8 for 10, 170 yards, and 4 touchdowns? Off of the bench, ice cold. Nobody didn't know he was probably going to play any of that game. And he had some outrageous moments last year for Texas. 3 games where he threw at least 5 passing touchdowns. I don't care who the competition was, okay? One of them was Kansas. By the way, they lost that game. You don't just beat Kansas, man. It takes a certain level to go out there and beat the Jayhawks. But here is the thing with Casey Thompson, is Nebraska has expectations that if you've not been paying close attention, you wouldn't really understand. A team that won 1 game last year in the Big Ten is the second choice to win the Big Ten West. But some of that has to do with Casey Thompson. Has to do with Mark Whipple, last year's Pitt offensive coordinator. Kenny Pickett, certainly, I think, would tell you good things about Mark Whipple and what he can do for somebody's pro prospects there. Casey Thompson is at 100 to 1. My thought process, Ben, is that if you tell me they can cash that plus 350 to 400 ticket, depending probably when you got it, to win a Big Ten West, you're going to be happy that you have a 100 to 1 ticket on a Casey Thompson, because that means, I would think, that he was a driving force to Nebraska hitting a level that people have been chomping at the bit to see them get back to.
We're talking about a 3-win football team a season ago. Nebraska was 3-9 straight up, but as the joke goes, and maybe it's a joke mixed in with some reality, Nebraska was the best 3-9 college football team we might ever see. All 9 losses by single digits. And Kevin is right. The expectations feel lofty for a team that has won 6 combined games the past 2 seasons. To have a win total at 7.5 and the second best price to represent the West Division in the Big Ten title game. It feels slightly skewed, but if they are going to even sniff that possibility, Casey Thompson orchestrating Nebraska's offense, now coordinated by Mark Whipple. Scott Frost is giving up the play calling responsibilities. That is going to be the reason why. I will just say quickly, that's why I think there is value on Caleb Williams at 6 to 1 to win the Heisman Trophy, because if USC is going to get close to that 20 to 1 price to win a national championship, it hovers around the idea of the quarterback. And the Heisman Trophy is a quarterback award. 17 of the last 21 winners have played the quarterback position. And 9 of the last 10, Lamar Jackson in 2016, the only exception to this rule, have won a conference championship, been in the college football playoff, been in the national championship game, or ended up winning that national title. Kev, we'll save the running backs for another time, because the standard of burden, or what you need to do as a running back to win a Heisman Trophy, leads to another conversation. Both Blake Corum and Will Shipley at 100 to 1. There's another running back that has the best odds on the board of any running back in the country. His name is Bijan Robinson. He is an outstanding player for Texas. But there's another player for Texas, their quarterback, Quinn Ewers, who is 50 to 1. Bijan Robinson actually has better odds than Quinn Ewers. Here is the final point I will make on Quinn Ewers. He lost some of that luster last year when he went to Ohio State to get that NIL bag and did not play for the Buckeyes. And then he transferred to Texas, the school he originally committed to. There have been 3 perfectly rated quarterback recruits in the history of college football since the turn of the millennium in 2000. Vince Young, Arch Manning, who will play at Texas next year, apparently, and Quinn Ewers. We are talking about historic quarterback recruits. If Texas is going to even get close to being back And not just that being a joke, it will be because of Quinn Ewers alongside Bijan Robinson. Throw in Xavier Worthy as well in that high-powered Steve Sarkisian offense. I think the value on the Heisman Trophy board is with one man, one quarterback, and his name is Quinn Ewers.
So tough, I think, though, for me to parse through these two. Because part of the reason that I think Quinn Ewers, I mean, the quarterback rating, you've told me a lot about him, is the fact that his safety blanket is maybe the most talented running back in college football in Bijan Robinson. If you are Sark, right, you don't maybe need to overextend Quinn Ewers because you have Bijan Robinson. The interesting thing with this pairing is the fact that week 2 they are going to play Alabama. And I don't know what their odds are going to look like post-loss. I'll tell you what happens if they win the game. All right?
Yep.
Everything changes, and both of their numbers are cut in half, if not more. And you don't have to it doesn't matter what the final score is. It means that they both were outrageous, okay? If they won that game. I wonder what it looks like if they lose. Because here is the thing, Ben, and I'll say this, and we didn't get to Blake Corum and Will Shipp. That's fine. I know you want to cross the finish line with your tickets, but when you've got big-time odds, get me to the last lap. Can Texas be in the conversation down the backstretch? They can, as long as Bama's that only loss.
17.5 is the spread in favor of the Tide on the road in Austin. More TMA up next.
If you want to pick like a pro, you need to be in the know. The future of sports gaming is now, and we take you inside the lines, breaking down all the action and what it means for your bet slip. Turn down the game and tune into Sports Grid Radio. Other networks talk sports talk, but we walk the walk, right up to the window. Sports Grid Radio. Listen free on the Sports Grid Radio app, iHeart, or TuneIn, or catch us on Sirius XM Sports Grid Channel 159.
Maurice Allen, 2015-2016 European Long Drive Tour Champion, 2017 World Number 1. Me personally, I keep my game face on me all the time. Especially coming out of the bunker, leaving the range, or even leaving the course. What's your story?
The morning after.
Why are you buying in on Dylan's stock for 2022?
Aaron Jones has been remarkably consistent for the Packers, and I kind of see him playing almost a Alvin Kamara role in the slot, sitting about wide. And I think they're going to try and save him from taking this, ground and pound, and they're going to leave that role to A.J. Dillon to have this kind of more of a balanced approach because they need a little more consistency in their passing game. I think it helps that the Packers' offensive line is right now ranked 5th.
The Sports Grid Network. The Early Line.
Football is always so much fun because you see new players literally every single year, and the anticipation is stupendous once it gets underway. And we're really close to a 12:30 game overseas this weekend between Northwestern and Nebraska. And yeah, you're going to settle into Connecticut playing Utah State with a 27.5-point line. Everybody gets in the way. Big Ten, Pac-12. We cannot wait for this.
Only on Sports Grid. Fantasy Sports Today.
The running back that appears to make the biggest jump maybe in the last 2 months, maybe in all of fantasy, honestly, Davis, is Dameon Pierce, who played for the University of Florida. And the beef that went on at Florida, Davis, is that people wanted to see him get the ball more. He really was never a primary running back at Florida. He's sort of a throwback guy in the sense that you give him the ball, he's never going to lose yards.
The Sports Grid Network. Pharrell, Coast to Coast.
This is yet, I'm told, at least the fourth different offense that Mayfield has to learn as a professional in his 5 years. And from the very start, Pharrell, they kind of knew it. I'm told after 2 weeks, he was so dominant over Darnold. It wasn't bad, but the fact of the matter is his timing was good. I'm told a couple of the throws are a little bit high. They feel that the timing will be better as these guys work together.
The Sports Grid Network.
Closing out hour number 1 of the morning after, live on this Tuesday, right here on Sports Grid. Sirius XM, channel 159, all across the Sports Grid network. I am Ben Stevens. Kevin Walsh has been here for most of this opening hour of TMA. And when Kevin Walsh got in the mix, the first topic of conversation was Baker Mayfield, officially named the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. And in that week 1 opener in Carolina for the Panthers, to kick off the regular season, it will be Baker against the Browns, Mayfield against the former team that drafted him number 1 overall back in 2018. And the Cleveland Browns have a win total of 8.5 on FanDuel. The under has the juice. The Panthers at 6.5, the under has the juice. Obviously, Cleveland is expected to win more games, but with how symbiotic their relationship appears to be this year in 2022, who wins more games this upcoming season, the Browns or the Panthers? We asked you that question and Fade the Public. And Kev, because of that disparity in the overall win total at 8.5 for Cleveland, 6.5 for Carolina, it should not be surprising to see the Browns get the majority of these votes, nearly 61% at our Fade the Public poll on Sports Grid TV on Twitter. Who do you think ends up winning more games, the Browns or the Panthers?
So look, it's kind of it's a head-to-head there, right? As you mentioned, with two teams with win totals that are off platform. But I take my chance with Carolina because here is something that people are far too comfortable assuming. Is this 4-0 start for the Cleveland Browns? Just because you're favored in all 4 games does not mean you're going 4-0. I know they're favored, or they were going to be favored, it felt like, for a while against Carolina, but now a dog. Oh, they got to beat the Jets. Do they? Do they have to beat the Jets? They have to beat the Steelers. I don't know about that. At Atlanta, imagine anything other than a rout? Yes, I can. It's more likely to me that they're 1-3 than 4-0.
Ooh, I like the point to end out hour number 1. Hour 2 of a Tangy Tuesday is up next.